Hey guys, this is a tutorial showing you a really quick and easy setup that you can use on the run with a simple single speed light on a stick that you can ask someone to hold for you, or you can have an assistant, and it's perfect for shooting single portraits on the run. So if you're traveling or maybe doing senior portraits, and it's basically working with available light and then adding a duck of light to the image just to give it a little bit of pop. So I was working in a laundrette in India, and I was working with these speed lights. I was working with the Yongnuo YN600 EXRT and also the Chimera portable softbox with a diffuser. So it's a great light. It gives a hard light which has got beautiful wrap, and I was using this fair way away from my models, and I was using it to mimic daylight, which was a flooding in the windows in each of these shots. So I had my assistant standing outside the laundrette, and he was feathering the light in through the windows. While I was there, I also shot just using available light. I got this portrait of the man reading the newspaper, and I just used available light and then processed that image. In Lightroom, I just lifted the shadows and managed to get that shot. So the setup was pretty simple. You can see the softbox there poking in through the windows, and it's just feathered. I'm a fair way away using the 70 to 200 mil lens, and basically the direction was mostly I wasn't doing a lot of talking. I just set my model up, and I was asking him to repeat a series of actions, and then just making sure that his face was looking into the light so that I could get the right shots. So you can see there my assistant is just outside and facing the speed light with the beauty dish on it towards the model. So just creating a little duck of light there. The way I calculated my exposure for this shot is, and the process is the same whenever I shoot. The first thing I do is I take a shot of my background. So basically I want to establish how I want my background to look, and then I'm adding the remaining light. So in this case, I set up my model in exactly the position that I wanted him to be in, and I exposed for the overall shot. So for this image, the readings were, I had an ISO of 800, I was shooting at f2.8 at 1/200th of a second. So once I was happy with that, I then needed to do a test for the lighting. Now with the lighting, basically what I do is I set up my speed light at I start at a very low power setting. So I might start at around an 1/8, a 16th power. In this instance, I tested at a 1/4 power, and it seemed to look really good. So basically with my light set at a 1/4 power, I got a reading of f2.8 and a half on the face. So it was another half a stop up, but when I then went to do the actual shot, I kept my reading the same. So basically, to shoot this, I've maintained a setting of f2.8 at 1/200th of the second. So basically, all I'm doing is adding an extra half stop of light to the shot. The trickiest thing about a shoot like this is knowing how much light to add in, and so it's always often it tends to look better for skin tones when they're slightly overlit, but then there's that you lose the quality of the light. So I'm constantly having to train myself to pull back with the lighting and underlight an image rather than overlight it, so you do get that softness, and that the trick is, if you look at an image and it looks lit, then you've possibly gone too far. And so that's the question that I often ask myself when I look at an image. Does it look lit or does it look overlit? And does the lighting look realistic? Is it matching the light that's already in the scene? And whilst I would have loved to have had a much moodier look to the lighting, like you see in this image when it's not lit, it wasn't as kind to his face. So they just, like, the natural light just wasn't enough. So I did light this slightly more than I would have liked, but I think the end result, the balance, I'm pretty happy with it. The next thing I did, just to try something different with this shoot, was I thought I'd shoot from the other direction and see what I could get there. Nothing changed in the settings for the power of the light or my exposure. I just simply tried a different angle, and again I did a test without light, and then did the shot by adding the flash, and was pretty happy with that angle. By now my model was getting into it and really enjoying himself. The final shot from this session in the Laundrette, I want to say I planned the whole thing, but it was actually one of those beautiful accidents where this beautiful man walked onto the set carrying the tea glasses, and I knew I just had to photograph him. He was actually standing behind me for a lot of the time that I was doing the first shot. But when I saw him, I knew exactly how I wanted to photograph him. At first, I thought that I wanted to have him just gazing out the window, so I set him up. There wasn't a lot of direction for this one. I just wanted him standing there, and the actual lighting setup is exactly the same. I did the test shot without flash first, and then I had the assistant outside the window popping in the light, same power settings, everything was exactly the same to give that feel of light coming through the window. It was during the shoot, I had him first looking out, but then I actually realised that I did want him looking at camera. When I had him stare me down, that's when I got the shot that I wanted. I knew I had the shot the minute he looked into the camera, because he really stared me down. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. I probably could have stopped shooting at that point, but I just kept going just in case something great happened. But it was all over very quickly. I got exactly what I wanted, and I was really happy with it. Really great little setup, this Chimera beauty dish. It gives a beautiful light. It's really simple to use, so you can have it on an extendable pole or held by an assistant, or you can just set it up on a light stand. And I've been using it, sort of skimming it in or feathering it in, and slightly side on, and you can see what I really love about it is the beautiful quality of the light that it gives. So it gives a hard, crisp look to the light, but then you've got rapid fall off, and pair that with a diffusion panel on the front of the softbox, and it actually helps spread the light slightly, which I found was ideal for darker skin tones. Darker skin tones are defined by highlights rather than shadows. So I found that using the beauty dish on a dark skin tone without the diffusion had too much contrast, and so it did need the diffusion panel. If I was photographing someone with a lighter skin tone, I probably could have gotten away with taking the front diffusion panel off, and because the lighter skin tones are defined by the shadows. And finally, I'm just going to show you how I edited these images in Lightroom. So the first thing I do is do a white balance. For this one, I'm just going to do auto because I think it looks pretty good. Lightroom does a pretty good job, and it's a bit hard to find a neutral spot. So I'm pretty happy with that. The next thing I want to do is I just want to drop my highlights a little bit just to rescue some and just to bring in a little bit of detail so it isn't looking too overlit. I also want to bring in a bit more detail into the shadows, so I'm going to open up the shadows. You can see here in the roof, I'm just getting a little bit more detail, not going all the way, and then I'm holding down the Option or Alt key on a PC and just sliding the black across. Just get a little bit of black there. Going to do the same for the white. I just want to get like one little speck. You can see that on the screen there. So happy with that. Let's have a look at before, after. All right, not a huge difference. We've got rid of the color cast that's there. A bit more natural looking color. And then I just want to give it a little bit of clarity. All right, just to bring out the midtones. Not going crazy for this one. I'm pretty happy with that, and I might just drop the saturation a little bit and just bring some vibrance up, and that's pretty much it. So I'm pretty happy with how these look out of the camera. Just a bit of color shift that I wanted to get rid of. Finally, I just want to crop it a little bit more, just so that his eyes are in the top third of the frame. It's just like a slight crop there. So there we go. So we've got before, after. It's just giving it a lift, and then just bringing him into that third of the frame. No question about him being the hero. I didn't like the fact that I had all that extra roof space. We've got the separation of his hair. It's kind of a combination of the flash and some of the natural lighting. Nice little highlight there. I could probably bring that highlight down a little bit more, but it starts to look dirty, so I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so this is the shot that I created this using natural light. I did have a go at lighting this shot, and I didn't like how it looked. It really flattened the image. So this gentleman was sitting on the other side of the room when I was shooting. I just really loved how it looked. Now, what I'm going to do is, so when I exposed for this, I basically exposed for the highlights, and which meant that a lot of the shadows, we lose a lot of detail. But that's okay because I know how much we can push Lightroom. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in those highlights even more. Open up the shadows, and I mean really open them up so that we can see all the detail in there to about there, because I want my skin tone to look a bit nicer. And make sure I've got a good black, so holding down the Option or Alt key, just come in a little bit. Do the same with the white, just slide across till we see a little speck appearing. Go back, back, back. That should be enough. So we've got before and after. All right, and that's starting to look a lot better. I want to make this look quite grungy and gritty, so I'm going to up the clarity there. All right, pretty happy with how that's looking. I might just not bring the highlights down quite as much, and I'm looking at the whites here. I don't want them to look too dirty, because if you go too far in the highlights, see what happens, how it starts to fill in tones that aren't there. It makes them look grey. That's what Lightroom does when it's a bit confused. So I think I'm going to stick with that. All right, so pretty happy with that overall. The one issue when you're shooting in this way, and because I'm on ISO of 800 and I was shooting this on the 5D Mark III, is I've got a bit of noise in the image. So when I zoom in, and I've zoomed in quite a lot, you can start to see that there is particularly a lot of color noise in there. So I want to address that next. So basically what I'm going to do is I've got my noise reduction slider, which is in the detail panel in the develop module in Lightroom. And what I'm going to do, we've got two ways of tackling noise. There is the luminance slider, which actually addresses the little flecks, the grain, the amount of grain. So you can see if I pull that across to the right, you can see what happens is it smooths it all out. It smooths out all the detail, but you also lose a lot of detail. So it reduces the appearance of noise or that grain-like structure, but it also takes away a lot of detail. So before I touch that slider, the first thing I do is the thing that makes a noisy image look unattractive is the color shift. So you can start to see in the skin tone here, we've got all these different flecks of color. So if I use the color slider instead, we can see that, have a look there. So that's before. You can see all the little blotches and colors there. If I slide that across, it's really cleaning up the image, and you're just left with the grain noise, which, you know what, isn't that bad. I don't mind it. It kind of looks like an old black and white image that was shot on film. So I don't mind it. So you can see before, after. So I slide that across, get rid of all my color noise, and then what I'm going to do is then bring in the luminance slider, and I don't want to go over the top. I just want to smooth out that noise a little bit, but I do like to leave some of the quality of the grain. So let's have a look at before, after, and I think that's cleaned it up. And the last thing I'll do now is give it a little bit of a sharpen so that I can just bring back some of that detail. So in order to do that, I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key on a PC, and I'm going to, while I'm holding it down, I'm going to slide across the masking slider. I'll just zoom out so you can see what happens. So with holding down the Option or Alt key on a PC and hitting the masking slider, if I go across to the left, you can see that the entire image is white. The sharpening will occur in the white areas of the image. So at this point, with zero masking, Lightroom is going to sharpen everything. As I go across to the left, I'm now telling Lightroom to only sharpen what's white. So if I keep sliding across, I can make sure that only the details that I want to sharpen are sharpened. So that's things like the edge of his shirt, maybe the newspaper that wrote behind him, and the finer points like his beard, eyelashes, and maybe the edge of the window. So I'm going to mask out to there. And now when I use my sharpening slider, I know that only those areas that I've masked are going to be sharpened, and areas such as the background or like the smoother areas won't be. So I'm not enhancing the noise by sharpening it. So let's have a look at that. So we can see that we've picked up some detail. I've probably gone too far. I'm going to back off a little bit, and we can see now before and after. So we've just picked up a little bit of detail, and I think that image is looking pretty good, so I'm pretty happy with that. So we got before and after, just brought out the detail there. If I wanted to, I could go further and maybe mask him in and make the background a bit moodier, but I'm pretty happy with how that looks overall. So finally, our T-Man, a couple of issues with this. First off, I'm going to go ahead and do a balance there, a white balance. Okay, so happy with how that's looking. The next part that annoys me about this image is that it's not as straight as I want it to be. So I can do that by eye, which I'm pretty happy with. That's straightened up. So there we go, that's looking better. And in fact, while I'm there, I'm going to just crop in a little bit more so that he is more of a hero in my shot rather than sort of taking up less space. So I've made him a little bit bigger in the shot. Now I'm going to drop down my highlights a little bit. I'm going to bring up my shadows a lot. I'm going to bring in some black, so it's holding down the Option or Alt key on a PC and just slide across. So I've got a good black. So let's have a look before, after. Not a lot, but you can see that you're starting to get the separation there in the hair. I'll do the same with the white. So just, you can see I've just picked up like one little speck there. So before, after. And for this one, I really want to pick up the clarity because I really like how it looks. So it's got like a lot of punch to it in the mid-tones. So let's have a look. We've got before and after, a little bit more. And then finally, I just want to get rid of a little bit of the saturation and then just bring in the vibrance. So we've got before, after, and that's it.